They do not hate you. I want you to hear that first, before anything else, because I know that is the fear sitting at the very bottom of it all. The fear that lives in the silence between phone calls. The fear that wakes you at 2 in the morning and will not let you rest. They do not hate you. But something is happening. Something quiet and painful and real. And if you are brave enough to sit with me today, I think I can help you understand it. My name is Margaret. I am 91 years old. I have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and more than enough years behind me to have made nearly every mistake a mother can make. I have loved fiercely and clumsily, and sometimes in ways that pushed the very people I was reaching for further away. And I have learned, slowly, painfully, honestly. So if you are a parent today whose adult child keeps their distance, whose calls are shorter than you would like, whose visits are rarer than they used to be, whose warmth feels just slightly out of reach, no matter how hard you try. Stay with me. What I have to say will not always be easy to hear, but I promise you it is said with love. And I promise you, it may be the most important thing you hear all year. I want to begin with something that happened to me in the winter of my 68th year. My eldest daughter, Caroline, had not visited in 7 months. We spoke on the telephone, yes, but the calls were careful. Polite in the way that people are polite when they are managing someone, rather than simply talking to them. I told myself she was busy. I told myself it was the distance. She lived in Bristol by then, and I was up in Yorkshire. I told myself many things that were easier than the truth. Then, one Sunday afternoon, she came unexpectedly, and we sat in my kitchen, and after a long silence, she said something I have never forgotten. She said, "Mum, when I ring you, I spend the first 5 minutes feeling guilty before you've said anything at all. I can hear it in your voice, and I don't have the energy for it anymore." I was stunned. I thought I had been careful. I thought I had been understanding. I thought I had been trying. And I had been trying. That was the terrible part. I had been trying so hard. But I had been trying to get something, rather than simply to give. And my children felt every bit of it, even the parts I had not said aloud. This is what nobody tells you about the distance between parents and adult children. Most of the time, it is not caused by cruelty. It is not caused by indifference. It is not even caused by a single argument or a specific wound. Most of the time, it is caused by accumulation. The slow, quiet, invisible accumulation of small things. A sigh held just a little too long. A question that carries a verdict inside it. A silence that communicates disappointment more clearly than words ever could. And most of the time, the parent who is causing it has absolutely no idea they are doing it. They are doing their very best, and their very best, as it stands, is pushing their child away. That was me. For years, that was me. I want to tell you 4 things that changed how I understood all of this. 4 lessons that came from the hardest years of my life. 4 things I wish someone had sat me down and said at 50, at 60, at 68. The first lesson is this. Your anxiety is not invisible. Your children can feel every bit of it, and over time they begin to protect themselves from it. I was an anxious mother. I would not have called it that at the time. I would have called it love. And it was love. Genuinely it was. But it was love tangled up with fear. And the two together became something my children had to manage every time they were near me. When Thomas was late ringing on a Sunday, I would ring him, then ring again. When Ellen told me she was going abroad, I would spend 3 weeks quietly catastrophizing and just barely hold it in. When Caroline made a decision I didn't agree with, I wouldn't say anything directly, but something in me would tighten. And they felt that tightening. Children always feel it. What this does, over years, is it trains them. They begin to understand, unconsciously, that being near you comes with a cost. That they will have to carry your feelings as well as their own. That they must be careful about what they share with you, because sharing might make you frightened or upset or hurt, and then they will feel responsible for your state. And so, they begin to ration how much of themselves they give you. Not out of unkindness, out of self-preservation. If you find that your adult children do not share much with you, ask yourself honestly, when they have shared in the past, what did you do with it? Did you listen without making it about yourself? Did you sit with their difficulty without rushing to fix it or panic about it? Or did they end up somehow managing you as well as their own situation? This is hard to look at, I know. I found it one of the hardest things I have ever looked at. But it changed everything when I did. Now, I want to stop here for a moment and speak directly to you. Because I know that what I'm sharing is sitting uncomfortably with some of you right now. Perhaps you're thinking, but I gave everything. I sacrificed everything. I have done my best. Yes, I believe you. I truly do. And here is what I have come to understand about that. The giving was real. The sacrifice was real. The love was absolutely real. But love and sacrifice, as great as they are, do not automatically translate into the kind of connection that makes another person want to draw close. That requires something else, something quieter, something that has nothing to do with how much you have given, and everything to do with how free you make them feel to simply be themselves in your presence. I will come back to that, because that is where the heart of all of this lives. The second lesson, and this one took me a very long time to see clearly, is this. Unspoken expectations are louder than you think. I had expectations of my children, of course I did. All parents do. I expected that they would visit regularly. I expected that they would ring on Sundays. I expected that family occasions would be a priority. I expected, if I am completely honest, that they would arrange their lives in ways that kept me near the centre of them. I never said any of this. That is what I told myself. I never said it. But I communicated it in 100 other ways. In the careful hurt when a visit was cancelled. In the way I would mention quietly that I hadn't heard from them in a while. In the way I talked about other mothers whose children rang every day, or lived nearby, or came home for Easter without fail. My expectations were never stated, but they were absolutely present. And my children felt them the way you feel a draft in a room. Something is wrong, something is cold, even if you cannot see the gap where the wind is coming in. The question I had to ask myself eventually was this: whose needs were these expectations serving? The answer, if I was honest, was mine. I wanted them close because I loved them, yes. But I also wanted them close because their closeness made me feel I had done something right, that I had mattered, that the years of effort had amounted to something I could see and hold. Their visits were not only visits. They were reassurance. They were evidence. And children, even adult children, even children in their 40s and 50s, have a very good nose for when they are being needed for someone else's comfort, rather than loved for their own sake. The difference between being loved and being needed is that love lets you go, and need holds on. The third lesson came to me through a conversation I had with my son Richard late one evening about 15 years ago. He said something that cracked something open in me. He said, "Mum, every time I make a different choice from what you would choose, I can feel your worry about whether it means you made mistakes, as though my life is a verdict on you." I sat with that for a long time, because it was true. When my children struggled, my first feeling, beneath the concern, was a kind of shame. What had I done wrong? What had I missed? When they made choices I didn't understand, I searched myself for the cause. And all of that self-examination conducted in their presence was really making their lives about me. I had confused caring about them with reflecting on myself through them. Your adult child is not a continuation of your story. They are the beginning of their own. And when we treat their choices as evidence about our parenting, as things that confirm or deny our worth as a mother or a father, we make every conversation they have with us a conversation about us. And that is exhausting to be around. Ask yourself, can your child tell you about a difficult decision they have made without you making them feel, even subtly, that they have let you down? Can they share a failure with you without your disappointment leaking through? Can they be imperfect in front of you without feeling judged? If the answer to any of those is no, they will show you less and less of themselves. Not because they do not love you, but because the cost of being seen by you has become too high. The fourth lesson is perhaps the most important of all, and it is this: silence is often a boundary, not a betrayal. When Caroline pulled back from me, I experienced it as rejection, as punishment, as something being taken from me. I chased it. I rang more often. I wrote letters. I turned up. And in doing so, I communicated to her very clearly that her boundary was something I was going to pursue rather than something I was going to respect. That is what we do, many of us, when we are frightened. We reach harder, we try harder. We mistake frantic pursuit for genuine connection. But what our children need when they have pulled back is not more of us. They need us to stop. They need us to become still. They need us to demonstrate, with our behavior rather than our words, that we can tolerate the distance without it becoming their emergency to fix. When I finally stopped chasing Caroline, when I sent one quiet letter that said simply, "I love you, there is no pressure, I am here whenever you are ready." She rang me 3 weeks later, and the conversation we had was the most honest we had had in years. She had not needed less contact because she loved me less. She had needed less contact because she needed to know that the contact, when it came, would be freely chosen rather than extracted. There is a profound difference between a child who calls because they want to and a child who calls because they know the silence will cost them something. You can only ever truly receive the first kind, and the only way to get the first kind is to make the second kind unnecessary. So where does this leave you? Perhaps sitting with something uncomfortable. Perhaps sitting with recognition. Perhaps sitting with a grief that this has named. Please be gentle with yourself. None of what I have described makes you a bad parent. It makes you a human one, a frightened one, a loving one who got tangled up in their love and didn't know how to be free of the tangle. The work is not about blaming yourself. The work is about becoming curious, about beginning to notice the moments when you reach rather than rest, when you communicate disappointment without words, when your child's choices become a referendum on your worth. Notice those moments, that is all. Not with punishment, not with shame, just with the gentle honesty of someone who has lived long enough to know that seeing clearly is the beginning of everything. If there is distance between you and your adult child right now, do not fill it with more reaching. Let it be there. Write to them without agenda. Speak to them without need. Ask about their lives as someone who is genuinely curious, not as someone keeping score. And if you can find it in yourself to say, quietly and without conditions, "I am sorry for the times my love came with weight attached. I am learning to love you differently. I am not there yet, but I am trying." That may be the beginning of something neither of you has dared to imagine. They do not hate you. I want to end where I began, with the thing I most need you to hear. They are carrying something too, the longing to be close to you without the weight of you, the wish that love could be simply love, uncomplicated, unheld. They did not pull away because you don't matter to them. They pulled away because you matter enormously. And the pain of that complicated love became more than they knew how to hold. You can change that. Not by trying harder in the old ways, but by becoming quieter, softer, more interested in who they actually are than who you hoped they might be. I did this. In my 70s, I finally began to do this. And the last 20 years with my children have been more honest and more warm and more truly close than anything that came before. It is not too late. I am 91 years old, and I am here to tell you it is never too late. This is the last lesson. I am Margaret, and I am so grateful you spent this time with me today. If something in what I have shared has touched you, or helped you, or even unsettled you in a way that feels important, please leave a word in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words mean more to me than you know. If you know someone who might need to hear this, please share it with them gently. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe so that we can keep sitting together like this, honestly, quietly, and without rush. Until next time,